Howdy, it's Iowa Prairie Girl. I am back at one of my favorite places, Wilkerson Park in Rock Falls, Iowa, Saragota County. It is, as you can tell, kind of brown out. It is the first weekend in October 2020 and things are drying up. Flowers are almost done blooming. We still have a few asters. I found my first orchid lady trestles here just a few minutes ago, but otherwise things are kind of done for the season. But there is one flower that blooms late in the summer and early into the fall, and that is gentian. And we're going to take a look today at stiff gentian. Now, gentian, like I said, is a plant that blooms later in the summer. And I'm going to kind of show you some of where I'm at here. I've had a grand slam kind of year for gentian today, or this summer. I have found 7 different types of gentian in Iowa, and that is awesome fun. To go look for gentian and then to discover it, it's better than an Easter egg hunt when you're a kid. So today we're going to take a look at stiff gentian, and I don't have to go very far to look for stiff gentian because I know that it grows prolifically here at Wilkerson Park. So a little bit information about gentian. I'm going to turn all the way around here, do a 360. There's Prairie Dog in the background. A little bit of information about gentian. Gentian is named after King Gentius, who was a king or a ruler 170 years before Christ in a country in southeast Europe. And gentian is grows pretty prolific there in southeast Europe. And he discovered that it is a useful herb, or can be used for a tonic or other medical purposes. And so he encouraged the use of gentian for the treatment of fevers, muscle spasms, and digestive problems. And so that is where the word gentian comes from. It's named after the king. Also, the root of gentian, he discovered, has a very aromatic taste, or not smell, has an aromatic smell to it, very pleasant, distinct smell, but it does have a bitter taste, and it has been used for years in Europe to be put in wines or other spirits or seltzers kind of drinks. So I don't know that I've tried gentian myself, but many of you may have experienced gentian in your spirited drinks. So if you'll just stick with me here, we're going to walk through Wilkerson Park, and we're going to get down in the prairie, and we're going to take an up close and personal look at, there she is, at stiff gentian. So please stay watching. So here I have a beautiful specimen of stiff gentian right in front of me. Now, stiff gentian normally likes to grow in places where there's not going to have competition from tall grasses. This one is right next to some goldenrod that is just the same height. Normally you're going to find it in places where it's a little more bare and it's not overcrowded. It usually gets to be about 2 feet tall. That would be a tall plant. Most plants I find aren't that tall. As you can see, it's a beautiful lavender light blue color. Sweetie. Gentian is known for being a real brilliant blue color, but stiff gentian is more of a real lavender light blue. And I've read that it can be white, but I've never seen a white stiff gentian. Another name for this plant is 5-flowered gentian, and as you can see, it grows in little bunches. You have your main stem here, and then it branches off towards the top here, and it's called 5-flowered gentian because normally it bunches together in clusters of 5 flowers. Anywhere between 3 to 7 flowers you'll find them. I have one little five bunch right over here, but most of these there's a little 3 patch and a little 2 patch, and then you have these bigger patches that have more like 7 or 8. So that 5-flowered gentian, because you're normally going to find them in bunches, the flower bunches in 5. Also, the number 5 is pretty common here in stiff gentian. It has 5 stamens right down in the middle here. I have to tell you, today was the first day I've actually looked inside a stiff gentian, or actually had the opportunity to, and I did get a couple pictures of the 5 stamens, and they are a white to a light purple color. Another 5 in this plant is the 5 petals. So for each of these little flowers, there are 5 petals that have a point to them. They have a tippy point, and they come to a point. They are not fringed. A lot of gentians, the tips of their the tips of their petals are fringed. These are not, but they come to a real fine point. And often they're closed. And so I have, like I said, I haven't really seen the stamens. You don't normally find these flowers wide open. They come to a pointed close. To me, they remind me of a castle. I would call them the castle of the prairie, because they look like little castles with their little pinnacles, their little tight closed pinnacles. So that's the flower or the petal. And then they have the calyx, or what with the sepals. So if you remember, the calyx is that bunch of sepals that are closed. When they're closed, they look like they're the bud. They protect the flower before it blooms, and then as they open up, they stay around the plant. And these are pretty prominent in the plant. You can see they also have 5 pointed tips to the light green calyx or sepals that stay real present on the plant. They're really pretty in and of themselves. I find the leaves of the wildflowers just as interesting or intriguing as the flower itself. And the leaves of the stiff gentian do not disappoint. They oh, good thing I took Prairie Dog for a long walk. Look at her. So the leaves of the stiff gentian, they get to be about 2.5 inches long, and they are half as wide as they are long. And they are not clasping leaves, but they're pretty darn close to being clasping. They don't have a stem or a petiole is the right term for that. They are sessile, meaning they come right off of the stem and of the main plant, and they're almost clasping, and they're opposite of each other. So you're going to find these leaves growing right across from each other on the stem, the main stem. And then the neat thing about it, and I don't know why I find this so intriguing, is that they grow at 90-degree angles from each other. So as they come up the stem, as they come up, they become smaller as they ascend up the stem. But you'll have one growing this way, the next one grows this way, then the next one grows this way, and then this one grows. So they're at 90-degree angles as they come up the stem, and they're really pretty. They are a real light green to a reddish purple. The stem also of the stiff gentian is pretty darn cool. It is square. It's not a circular flower stem. It really has 4 angles to it, 4 right angles to it, and it is square. And it gets to be also a really pretty light green to a purplish red color. The whole plant itself, which is, I guess the more I talk about this plant, the more I find it super cool. The whole plant itself is very hairless, so everything you touch is real smooth and soft to it. There's no hairs on this plant. This plant is also called argueweed, or I think I say that right, or agueweed. Ague is a term used to describe malaria or any disease that you would have a fever from. And so this plant was used to treat malaria, and so that's why it's called agueweed or agueweed. Of course, stiff gentian refers to the fact that its flowers are very erect, and so that's where we come up with the name stiff gentian. Now, the habitat that this this flower grows in. You're going to find it in sunny or part sunny areas. I thought it was just a prairie plant, but the more that I've been on adventures and have learned to identify it, I have found it in some really what I thought was kind of crazy areas. So prairies, from a dry, rocky, acidic kind of prairie with a high pH to wet prairies, wet areas, and you might even find it on the edge of a woods. Hello. And you're going to find it also, I found it in the most bizarre place. I had someone sneak up on me. That was kind of startling. I'm sure I startled him just as much as he startled me. Where were you? You weren't a very good guard dog. So the most bizarre place that I found it was 2 weeks ago. I was at Bixby State Preserve in the southern or the central part of Iowa, and I was along a very cold spring-fed trout stream, and there were some real large boulders, and I had to go across the stream, waded through it to get to this boulder, and I really felt like, I mean, if you've ever been where you've been, it felt like you were where fairies lived. This place was like a fairyland, and on top of this boulder were these beautiful little mosses growing and little delicate plants, and right in the middle of this was a small stiff gentian plant that looked like it was the castle of the fairies. And so quite surprised to find a stiff gentian along a trout stream in the woods on top of a boulder. So I guess I learned that it can grow in several areas and not just in a prairie here in North Iowa. One thing that's different about this wildflower than most wildflowers that you're going to find out in the prairie is that this one does not have a deep, deep root. It has a tap root. And each of these flowers will develop or dry up into 2 different seed capsules, and in those seed capsules will be tiny little gentian seeds, and they are dispersed by the wind or moved around by water. And so it's a biannual. It's not like a wildflower that you might find in the same spot for decades because of its long root. These guys move around basically by reseeding itself with seeds. All right, well, that's what I know about stiff gentian. Thank you for watching my video. I hope you enjoyed it. Please feel free to share my YouTube channel. Share it with others and help others to appreciate the coolness of wildflowers. Appreciate that you stayed tuned, and I hope that you get to be out into the wild, and I hope that you see something wonderful. Now there she goes. Come here.